Chapter 1. The Affair at the Photograph. That wasn't Hearst's grand drawing room of the Beaumont estate was a sanctuary of old wealth and restrained elegance. Gilded frames hung on the walls, portraits of stern ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow every movement. Heavy velvet drapes muffled the late spring sunlight, casting a muted glow over the polished mahogany furniture. It was here, amidst this hushed world of inherited privilege, that a storm was about to break. Lady Beatrice Beaumont, a woman of impeccable poise and aristocratic bearing, sat rigidly on the tufted sofa, clutching a silver locket in her pale hands. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, betraying none of the tempest roiling beneath her calm exterior. The locket contained a photograph, a delicate, sepia-toned image of a young woman, her eyes glimmering with secrets. Yet, Lady Beatrice insisted, the photograph was not hers. The room was filled with a gathering of the household's closest, a small circle of acquaintances and family, all bound by their own secrets and motives. There was Sir Reginald, the brooding heir with a reputation as shadowed as the corners of the room; Miss Clara, the delicate yet sharp-tongued companion; Dr. Hawthorne, whose keen eyes missed nothing; and the enigmatic Mr. Felix Grant, whose charm belied a labyrinth of hidden depths. The air was thick with tension as Lady Beatrice's voice trembled with accusation. This locket, it has been tampered with. The photograph inside it does not belong to me. Yet, someone planted it in my possession. Why, and what does it mean? Before anyone could respond, the butler, ever vigilant, announced a discovery. A hidden drawer in Lady Beatrice's writing desk was found ajar, containing a torn letter stained faintly with ink and something darker. The contents were missing, save for a cryptic signature that matched no known hand. The household fell into uneasy silence. Whispers of betrayal, stolen identities, and long-buried grudges floated like shadows between the assembled guests. The mystery was palpable. A photograph that wasn't hers, a missing letter, and an undercurrent of deceit. It was in this charged atmosphere that a new presence was announced. Hercule Poirot, the celebrated Belgian detective renowned for his little gray cells, had been summoned. His reputation for unraveling the most tangled human webs preceded him. As Poirot stepped into the room, his meticulous appearance, a perfectly groomed mustache, a crisp suit, and a gaze sharp as a blade seemed to command the very air itself. He surveyed the scene with a subtle smile, sensing the undercurrents beneath polite faces. The truth, Poirot murmured softly, is a photograph with many layers. We must peel them back carefully. Thus began the affair at the photograph that wasn't hers, a puzzle of identity, deception, and buried pasts that only Poirot's unparalleled mind could hope to unravel. Chapter 2. The first closed. Heavy oak door to the drawing room had barely closed behind Poirot when the household staff began to stir with anxious whispers. The atmosphere was thick with a curious blend of anticipation and unease, like the sudden hush before a storm's first clap of thunder. Lady Beatrice's pale hands trembled as she handed the detective the silver locket, the object now at the center of this mysterious web. Poirot took the locket delicately, as if it were both precious and fragile, and examined it closely. The intricate filigree of silver work, the tiny hinges, the clasp all bore the marks of careful craftsmanship. Yet what intrigued him most was the photograph itself. It was an ordinary portrait at first glance, a young woman, her eyes bright and unervingly direct. But Poirot's sharp gaze noted a subtle anomaly, a slight discoloration near the lower edge, as if the picture had been altered, replaced, or tampered with. Madame Beaumont, Poirot began, may I ask, when did you first notice this photograph was not your own? Lady Beatrice inhaled deeply, steadying herself. Only this morning. I was preparing to attend the luncheon with my niece when I found the locket in my vanity drawer. The photograph inside. It was unfamiliar. I am certain it was not here yesterday. As Poirot turned the locket slowly in his hands, The room's other occupants exchanged furtive glances. Sir Reginald Beaumont, his jaw clenched tight, stared at the floor, avoiding the detective's penetrating eyes. Miss Clara's fingers fidgeted nervously with the lace handkerchief she held. Dr. Hawthorne observed quietly, while Mr. Felix Grant maintained his usual inscrutable expression. "Have there been any recent visitors to the estate who might have had access to your personal belongings?" Poirot inquired. Lady Beatrice shook her head. "Only the usual, family and close acquaintances. None with ill intent, I would hope." Poirot's eyes swept the room again, noting each expression with clinical precision. "Very well. We must examine the locket's surroundings and any recent disturbances, however slight. It is often in the smallest details that truth hides." He rose and moved toward Lady Beatrice's writing desk, the very desk where the torn letter had been found. The drawer was indeed slightly ajar, revealing a faint impression of hurried disturbance. Poirot's fingers traced the edges of the drawer, noting the absence of dust along the seams, suggesting recent use. "Is it possible this drawer was opened yesterday or last night?" he asked. The butler, standing silently by, nodded gravely. "It was locked yesterday morning, monsieur. I saw to it myself." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then the letter's disappearance must have occurred within these hours. A clue indeed." He gently retrieved the torn letter fragment, holding it up to the light. The faint ink smudges hinted at hurried writing. More intriguing was the partial signature, a looping flourish ending abruptly. Unfamiliar to all present. "Does anyone recognize this signature?" Poirot asked. No one volunteered. The silence deepened. Poirot placed the fragment carefully into an envelope, then turned his attention back to the room. "Now, we must consider the possibilities. Who benefits from this substitution of the photograph? And what secrets might the missing letter conceal?" At that moment, a maid entered quietly, carrying a tray. Her eyes darted nervously as she approached Lady Beatrice, whispering something briefly. Lady Beatrice's face paled further. "What news?" Poirot asked calmly. The maid replied in a hushed tone, "Madam, a valuable pearl necklace is missing from the boudoir. It was last seen this morning, but now it's nowhere to be found." The room shifted instantly. A theft on top of mystery. The stakes were rising. Sir Reginald's voice broke the tense silence. "How could this happen in a house like this? Who would dare?" Poirot held up a hand to quiet the growing voices. "Patience. We shall uncover the truth, piece by piece." He motioned for the maid to lead him to the boudoir. The room was as lavish as the drawing-room silken drapes, an antique vanity, and scattered traces of recent activity. Poirot's keen eyes scanned the scene for signs of disturbance. "Tell me, was the window open?" he asked. "No, monsieur. The windows are all locked," the maid replied. "Then the thief must be someone with access, a member of the household or a visitor known well enough to enter without suspicion." Poirot's gaze fell on a faint scuff mark near the carpet's edge. Kneeling, he examined it closely. The soil beneath the rug was undisturbed, suggesting the mark was recent and deliberate. Nearby, a tiny thread, dark and fine, lay caught on the corner of the dressing table. "An interesting fragment," Poirot murmured. "We shall keep this." Back in the drawing room, Poirot gathered the occupants. This theft is not merely an act of greed but a message. The substitution of the photograph, the missing letter, and now this necklace, they are threads in the same tangled fabric. Miss Clara's voice trembled. "But who would want to cause such chaos? To what end?" Poirot smiled faintly. "That, mademoiselle, is what we shall discover. Every action conceals a motive, and every motive hides a deeper truth." He paused, observing the faces before him, some nervous, others guarded, all concealing their own stories. "Tonight, I shall examine each of you closely. The truth is patient, but it does not wait forever." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Beaumont estate, the first clues had been uncovered. A photograph that was not hers, a torn letter that whispered secrets, and a stolen necklace that spoke of desperation. The mystery was thickening, and Poirot's little gray cells were already at work, weaving these fragments into a tapestry that would reveal the darkest corners of human nature. The game was afoot. Chapter 3. The gathering of suspects as evening settled over the Beaumont estate. The drawing room once again became the stage for a gathering of uneasy minds. The flicker of candlelight danced upon the faces of those summoned to the heart of the mystery, their features etched with a mixture of suspicion, apprehension, and carefully veiled composure. Poirot, standing at the center like a conductor orchestrating an unseen symphony, prepared to listen, to observe, and above all, to unravel the tangled threads binding these lives together. One by one, the suspects were introduced, not merely by name, but by the stories that clung to them like shadows. Sir Reginald Beaumont, the eldest son and heir to the estate, was a man whose stature seemed burdened with the weight of expectation. His sharp jawline and dark eyes bore a persistent restlessness, as if secrets lurked behind his measured glances. There were whispers about his recent reckless ventures and mounting debts. Whispers he neither confirmed nor denied. To outsiders, a devoted son. To insiders, a man straining against invisible chains. Miss Clara Ashford, Lady Beatrice's companion, possessed a delicate beauty that contrasted sharply with her fierce intelligence. Her smile, often tinged with a hint of sardonic amusement, masked a history filled with hardship and ambition. Born to a modest family, she had ascended through determination and charm. Yet the brittle edges of her past often flickered beneath her polished facade. Her loyalty to Lady Beatrice was unquestioned, yet loyalty sometimes conceals more than it reveals. Dr. William Hawthorne, the family physician, was a man whose quiet demeanor belied a mind as precise as any scalpel he wielded. Known for his discretion and kindness, he was often the confidant of the family's deepest concerns. Yet, behind the courteous exterior, Poirot detected a hint of unease, a subtle tension that suggested knowledge withheld, or burdens carried in silence. Finally, Mr. Felix Grant, a guest of recent arrival, was a figure shrouded in mystery. His polished manners and effortless charm had earned him a place in high society. Yet few knew the true origins of his wealth or the nature of his business. His smile never quite reached his eyes, and his presence seemed to ripple through the room like a stone dropped into still water, disturbing the surface in imperceptible ways. Poirot's gaze rested on each in turn, noting the interplay of glances, the fleeting expressions that betrayed hidden tensions. There was more beneath the surface: unspoken alliances, veiled rivalries, and secrets buried deep. Now, Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding. "It is time we understand not only who you are, but also what binds you to this estate, and to each other. We are not merely seeking a thief or a liar, we seek the truth that connects all these pieces." He gestured toward Lady Beatrice, who nodded for Sir Reginald to speak first. Sir Reginald's voice was measured, but carried an undercurrent of impatience. "I have been here all my life, as you know. The estate, my family, these are my responsibilities. Yes, there are financial difficulties, but nothing that would drive me to theft or deception. I am loyal to my mother and the family name." His eyes flickered briefly toward Mr. Grant before returning to Poirot. "Miss Clara was next. I have served Lady Beatrice faithfully for years. My only desire is to see her safe and the family's reputation intact. I know there are stories and rumors, but I assure you, I have no part in whatever mischief has occurred." Dr. Hawthorne offered a quiet nod. "I have tended to the family for a decade. Their health and well-being have always been my priority. I have no interest in any intrigue, though I admit recent events have unsettled me." Poirot's eyes lingered on Mr. Grant, who finally spoke. "I arrived at the estate a fortnight ago, invited by Lady Beatrice herself. My business interests lie elsewhere. Yet I find myself entangled in this affair through no fault of my own. I assure you, I seek only clarity and justice. As the conversation unfolded, subtle details emerged, a reference to a strained business deal between Sir Reginald and Mr. Grant, a whispered argument overheard between Miss Clara and Lady Beatrice days prior, and the faintest hint that Dr. Hawthorne had been unusually insistent on privacy. Regarding a recent medical consultation with Lady Beatrice, Poirot listened intently, weaving these fragments into a growing tapestry of human complexity. He noted, too, the small things, the way Sir Reginald's fingers tapped impatiently against the armrest, how Miss Clara's gaze darted toward the closed curtains as if wary of the outside world, the slight flush on Dr. Hawthorne's cheek when questioned about the missing letter, and the calculated calm with which Mr. Grant observed every reaction. It is often, Poirot mused aloud, in the spaces between words and in the silence of what is left unsaid, that the greatest truths reside. The suspects, each cloaked in their own mysteries, now formed a closed circle, a web of relationships marked by loyalty, resentment, ambition, and fear, each had a motive, whether financial, emotional, or reputational. Each guarded secrets that could illuminate or obscure the path to truth. As the evening deepened, the estate settled into an uneasy stillness, the flickering candle flames casting long, wavering shadows. Outside, the gardens lay cloaked in darkness, a world away from the quiet storm brewing within these walls. Poirot's mind, ever alert, began to discern patterns in the subtle shifts of behavior, the hidden glances, and the fractured narratives, the photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the missing necklace. All were pieces of a puzzle that demanded patience and precision. Tomorrow would bring questions, interviews, and perhaps new revelations. For now, the players were gathered, the game was set, and Poirot's little gray cells were already turning. Chapter 4. Poirot arrived. Morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Beaumont estate, casting a gentle glow over the quiet halls. Yet within the walls of the grand mansion, a tension lingered like a low hum beneath the surface. The household was unsettled, and the air seemed charged with silent questions and guarded glances. Into this charged atmosphere stepped Hercule Poirot, the little Belgian detective whose reputation for unerring insight and methodical precision preceded him wherever he went. He arrived with a deliberate grace, his posture impeccable, his every movement measured and exact, dressed in a tailored suit of deep navy, with his signature waxed mustache perfectly coiffed. Poirot entered the drawing room with a subtle flourish. His sharp eyes swept across the assembled group. Lady Beatrice, whose pale complexion betrayed the strain beneath her elegant facade. Sir Reginald, standing with a rigid, almost defensive posture. Miss Clara, seated with a poised yet wary demeanor. Dr. Hawthorne, quietly observing. And Mr. Felix Grant, whose easy charm masked an unreadable expression. Poirot offered a small, courteous bow. "Madam, Monsieur, I thank you for allowing me to join your intriguing gathering." Lady Beatrice nodded, relief flickering in her eyes. "Monsieur Poirot, we are grateful you have come so promptly. The events of these past days have left us all anxious." Poirot inclined his head, then produced a small notebook and a delicate magnifying glass. In matters such as these, no detail is too insignificant. The truth is often hidden in what others overlook. He began with the photograph in the silver locket. Holding it carefully, Poirot observed every nuance, the texture of the paper, the slight fading at the edges, the faint discoloration near the corner that suggested a replacement or alteration. He then asked, "Madame Beaumont, may I see the locket once more?" With hands still trembling slightly, Lady Beatrice handed it over. Poirot's gaze flicked toward the photograph once again. "This image, it has the air of familiarity, yet it is not yours. Have you any idea whose it might be?" No, Lady Beatrice replied softly. That is the mystery. Poirot's eyes drifted to Sir Reginald. And you, monsieur, what were you doing when the locket was discovered? Sir Reginald met Poirot's gaze squarely. I was in the library, reviewing some documents concerning our family estate's finances. It is no secret that there are concerns. Poirot noted the slight tightness round Sir Reginald's mouth. Indeed, financial strain can be a powerful motivator. Turning to Miss Clara, Poirot inquired, and you, mademoiselle, have you noticed anything unusual in recent days? Miss Clara hesitated, fingers tightening around the lace handkerchief she held. Only a few arguments between Lady Beatrice and Sir Reginald. Matters of the estate, mostly. Dr. Hawthorne cleared his throat softly. Lady Beatrice has been unwell, but nothing severe. There was a private consultation last week, which I advised remain confidential. Poirot's eyes sharpened. Confidential, yes. Such discretion often conceals more than just medical advice. Mr. Grant smiled thinly. I, for one, find the focus on Lady Beatrice somewhat telling. When a family's foundation trembles, one must look at all who stand near the pillars. Poirot observed this exchange with keen interest. Each reaction, each inflection, provided subtle clues beyond the spoken words. He then turned to the torn letter fragment, now carefully sealed in an envelope. The missing correspondence, Poirot mused, suggests secrecy and urgency. Whoever tore this letter sought to hide something very important. He asked the butler, has anyone been seen near Lady Beatrice's writing desk recently? The butler responded with a respectful bow. Only members of the household and trusted guests, monsieur. The doors to the study and the writing room have remained locked except for the family and close attendance. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. An inside matter, then, or an intruder with knowledge of the household's workings. He took a step back and surveyed the room once more. Now, I must confess, the official explanation of events is insufficient. There are contradictions that demand closer examination. He pointed subtly to Sir Reginald's clenched fists, Miss Clara's averted gaze, and Dr. Hawthorne's tense posture. Each of you has your own truths, your own motives, Poirot said. It is my task to untangle these threads and reveal the design beneath. The detective's eyes settled finally on Lady Beatrice. Madam, I must ask you to recount in detail the events of the past 24 hours. Every movement, every encounter, no matter how trivial it may seem. Monsieur Poirot, he announced, we have discovered evidence that implicates Sir Reginald Beaumont in the theft of the pearl necklace. A hush fell over the room. All eyes turned toward Sir Reginald, whose face had paled markedly. Explain, constable. Poirot said, his voice calm but resolute. The constable produced a small, velvet pouch from his coat pocket. Inside lay the missing pearl necklace, unmistakable in its delicate shimmer. This was found in the garden shed, monsieur, Reynolds continued. The door was locked, but signs indicate it was forced open. Sir Reginald's monogrammed handkerchief was found inside. Sir Reginald's protest was immediate and vehement. This is preposterous. I have never been near the garden shed in days. Lady Beatrice gasped softly, and Miss Clara's fingers clenched tightly around her handkerchief. Dr. Hawthorne's eyes narrowed, while Mr. Grant regarded the scene with cold detachment. Poirot raised a hand to quiet the mounting voices. Let us examine the facts calmly. He walked to the window and peered toward the garden. The grounds were vast, dotted with hedges and flower beds, but the shed stood alone, a small wooden structure worn by time. Poirot turned back to the group. The monogrammed handkerchief is a curious detail. Monsieur Reginald, can you explain how it might have come to be in that shed? Sir Reginald's face flushed with anger. I cannot. Someone is setting me up, perhaps to deflect attention from the real culprit. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, but we must consider the possibility that the handkerchief was planted deliberately. He examined the pouch and the necklace carefully. The pearls show no sign of dust or dirt, suggesting they were not hidden for long. Turning to the butler, Poirot asked, "Has the shed been accessed recently by any household member or visitor?" The butler shook his head. "No one has had legitimate reason to enter, monsieur. The key is kept with the groundskeeper, who was away until late afternoon." Poirot's eyes glinted. Then the forced entry must have been recent, and the necklace placed there in haste. The detective then requested Sir Reginald's shoes, which were produced reluctantly. Kneeling, Poirot compared their soles with footprints found near the shed earlier. The shoe treads did not match. He rose slowly. "Monsieur Reginald, your denial is supported by this evidence. The footprints near the shed belonged to a smaller shoe, more delicate." Sir Reginald's tension visibly eased. Poirot turned to the others. "This apparent proof of guilt is misleading. The planted handkerchief and the forced entry suggest an attempt to frame Sir Reginald." Miss Clara spoke softly, "But who would go to such lengths?" Poirot smiled faintly. "That is precisely the question we must ask. The real culprit seeks to misdirect us, to confuse and confound." He then addressed the group with deliberate care. "We must not allow ourselves to be swept away by superficial evidence. The truth lies beneath, and we must keep our wits sharp." Dr. Hawthorne nodded solemnly. "This certainly complicates matters," Mr. Grant added quietly, "a clever ploy indeed. But the cleverness may be its undoing." Poirot's mind raced through the implications. The necklace's reappearance in the shed was a bold, perhaps desperate gambit. Whoever was responsible was willing to risk exposure to shield themselves. He requested the household to remain vigilant overnight. "I shall need to observe the interactions closely, for the guilty party will reveal themselves through impatience, fear, or carelessness." The gathering dispersed, leaving Poirot alone with his thoughts in the dimly lit drawing room. The false lead was a trap laid to ensnare the innocent, but it also offered a glimpse into the mind of the deceiver. As the night deepened, Poirot's little gray cells worked relentlessly, sifting through each detail, each subtle nuance of human behavior. The game had grown more complex, the stakes higher, yet Poirot remained unfazed. He had faced many such labyrinths before. "Patience, mon ami," he murmured to himself. "The truth will emerge, even from the darkest shadows." Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying secrets yet to be uncovered. Within the Beaumont estate, the first false lead had been laid bare, but the true mystery only deepened. Chapter 7. The psychological gamut. Dawn broke quietly over the Beaumont estate, yet the air inside remained charged with a tension that refused to dissipate. The first false lead had unsettled the household, the accusation against Sir Reginald casting a shadow that darkened every glance and every whispered conversation. Poirot, however, was undeterred. His approach to the investigation had shifted subtly, focusing not merely on tangible evidence, but on the delicate and intricate dance of human psychology. He understood that beneath the polished veneer of civility, emotions, fear, guilt, ambition played their own game, and he intended to become its master. As the household gathered once more in the drawing room, Poirot took his place with serene confidence. He began to speak softly, deliberately, weaving his words with the precision of a master craftsman. "My friends," he said, "it is said that the mind is a labyrinth where the truth is hidden behind many doors. It is my task to find the one that leads to light." His gaze settled on Miss Clara first. "Mademoiselle Ashford, you have served Lady Beatrice faithfully, yet I sense a storm beneath your calm exterior. Tell me, have you felt threatened, or perhaps compelled to act beyond your usual duties?" Clara's eyes narrowed briefly, a flicker of surprise passing before she masked it with her usual poise. "Monsieur Poirot, I serve with loyalty and discretion. If tensions exist, they are not mine to bear." Poirot smiled gently but pressed on. "And yet, Even the most loyal can be swayed by desperation or fear. He shifted his attention to Sir Reginald, who sat rigidly, his jaw clenched. "Monsieur, you face accusations that challenge your honor. Such pressure can unravel the strongest resolve. How have you coped with this burden?" Sir Reginald's voice was low but controlled. "I have maintained my composure. There's no truth to these accusations." Poirot's eyes, however, caught a fleeting tremor in the man's hands, an involuntary twitch betraying anxiety beneath the surface. Turning to Dr. Hawthorne, Poirot inquired softly, "Doctor, you are privy to the private struggles of this family. Do you observe changes in their behavior that might shed light on these events?" Dr. Hawthorne hesitated, then replied, "Stress has taken its toll, particularly on Lady Beatrice. The weight of secrets is heavy, and sometimes it is those closest who bear the deepest wounds." Poirot's gaze shifted finally to Mr. Grant, whose cool demeanor remained intact. "Monsieur Grant, you enter this circle with an outsider's eye. Do you perceive cracks in the facade, moments when truth slips through?" Grant's smile was thin and knowing. "Observation is a skill honed by necessity. I see more than is often revealed." Poirot nodded. "Excellent. Observation and subtlety will guide us forward." He then began his psychological maneuvers, employing verbal traps and carefully phrased questions, designed to provoke reactions revealing truths that the suspects sought to hide. Addressing the group collectively, he said, "Imagine, if you will, a photograph not your own placed in your possession. What feelings would such an act stir within you?" Miss Clara's fingers clenched visibly. Confusion, betrayal. Sir Reginald's eyes darkened. Suspicion, anger. Lady Beatrice's voice was a whisper. Fear. Poirot smiled faintly. "Precisely. Such emotions can lead one to desperate actions or desperate lies." He then spoke of trust and betrayal, loyalty and deception, drawing the occupants into a web of introspection and subtle accusation. As the conversation unfolded, Poirot noticed a shift. Miss Clara's usual composure wavered. Sir Reginald grew restless, his eyes flickering toward Mr. Grant. Dr. Hawthorne's calm demeanor showed signs of strain, and Mr. Grant's watchful gaze sharpened. Poirot seized upon these reactions with quiet satisfaction. Later, in a private moment, he observed Lady Beatrice alone in the garden, her hands trembling as she clutched the silver locket. "Madam," Poirot said gently, approaching, "the heart often knows more than the mind dares admit. Trust your instincts." She looked up, tears shimmering. "I feel as though I am being watched, and yet no one will tell me what they see." Poirot placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We shall find the eyes behind the shadows, madam. Have faith." Back inside, Poirot set traps of subtle suggestion in his conversations, watching carefully for any slip of fleeting glance, a sudden hesitation, a defensive word. It was in these moments that a key figure began to crack, not with confession, but with a telltale discomfort, a faint tremor in the voice, a tightening of the lips. Poirot's keen intellect recognized the psychological weak spot, the concealed fear that the real culprit desperately guarded. The game of minds was underway, each move calculated, each response a piece in a delicate dance of truth and deception. As evening fell once more, the tension in the Beaumont estate deepened. Yet amidst the mounting unease, Poirot's little gray cells worked tirelessly, teasing apart the threads of human emotion to reveal the concealed heart of the mystery. The photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace, they were more than mere objects. They were symbols in a psychological battleground. And in this battle of minds, Poirot alone held the key to victory. Chapter 8. A secondary mystery. Morning light had barely spilled over the hills surrounding the Beaumont estate when an urgent summons interrupted the household's uneasy routine. A pall of tension, already thick and suffocating, deepened with the news that arrived like a sudden thunderclap. A second crisis had emerged, one that threatened to unravel the fragile threads Poirot had been weaving. Lady Beatrice stood trembling in the drawing room, a folded piece of parchment clenched tightly in her hand. The room's occupants gathered swiftly, eyes wide with apprehension. "Monsieur Poirot," Lady Beatrice began, voice quivering, "a letter one of great importance has gone missing. It was placed safely in my private desk last night, but now it is nowhere to be found." Poirot stepped forward, his keen gaze sharpening. "Tell me, madam, what was the nature of this letter?" Lady Beatrice hesitated. "It was from a distant relative, containing matters of family inheritance and delicate affairs. Its contents are confidential, but I feared it held clues to the unrest troubling this house." The detective's brow furrowed thoughtfully. "And when was it last seen?" "Last night, before retiring. The desk was locked, and the key kept in my possession." Poirot turned to the others. "Has anyone seen or heard anything unusual during the night?" A murmur of denial spread through the room, but Poirot noted the flicker of unease in several faces. The butler, ever discreet, stepped forward. "Monsieur, I must add that shortly after midnight, a soft noise was heard near the library, a door opening and closing. I investigated but found no one." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Interesting." He requested to see Lady Beatrice's writing desk once more. The drawer, previously found ajar, was now firmly locked. Poirot carefully inspected the lock and surrounding wood, finding subtle scratches near the keyhole, signs of tampering. He lifted the desk's blotter and discovered a faint imprint of handwriting, a name, partially legible, that did not match any household member. "An intriguing clue," Poirot murmured. As he examined the scene, a maid entered, holding an envelope sealed with crimson wax. "Monsieur Poirot, this was found on the doorstep early this morning." Poirot broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The contents were cryptic. A veiled warning: the truth buried beneath lies is a danger to all who seek it. Beware the shadows that watch and the hands that reach in the night. The handwriting was unfamiliar but elegant, the words precise and chilling. Lady Beatrice clutched the letter tightly. Who would send such a message? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Someone who wishes to intimidate, to conceal their actions. The disappearance of the letter and this warning suggest the perpetrator is active, watching, and desperate. Sir Reginald shifted uncomfortably. This is more than mere theft. Someone is playing a dangerous game. Miss Clara's voice trembled slightly. Could it be connected to the photograph, the necklace, the torn letter? Poirot nodded gravely. "I believe so. We are dealing not with isolated acts, but with a concerted effort to mislead and manipulate." He turned to Dr. Hawthorne. "Have you noticed any changes in the household's atmosphere or behavior that might hint at the culprit's identity?" The doctor considered. "There's an undercurrent of fear and suspicion, yet also of determination. The guilty may grow reckless," Mr. Grant added. "Such threats often escalate when the perpetrator senses their web unraveling." Poirot's mind raced. The secondary mystery, the missing letter, and ominous warning shifted the investigation into new territory. The stakes were higher and the danger more immediate. He resolved to increase surveillance within the estate, to observe every movement, every word, every shadow. Later, as twilight deepened, Poirot convened a quiet meeting with Lady Beatrice. "Madam, this new development suggests the murderer is not content with secrecy alone. They seek to control the narrative, to silence those who might uncover the truth." Lady Beatrice's eyes were haunted. "What can we do?" Poirot's voice was steady, confident. "We wait patiently, we watch carefully, and we trust that the smallest detail will lead us to the heart of the mystery." The night settled over Beaumont like a heavy cloak, the flickering candle flames casting long, wavering shadows. Beneath the surface, the silent game of deception continued. But Poirot's little gray cells were already alert to the subtle signals, whispers, glances. Tremors that would guide him toward the elusive culprit. The photograph that was not hers. The torn letter, the stolen necklace, and now the missing correspondence, all pieces in a growing mosaic of secrets and lies. And as the estate held its breath, the dance of truth and deception spiraled onward, more intricate and perilous than ever before. Chapter 9. Hidden Connections. The next morning dawned with a gray sky, casting a somber hue over the Beaumont estate. The weight of recent events pressed heavily upon the household, fracturing the fragile calm that once defined these stately walls. As the inhabitants moved through their routines, furtive glances and whispered conversations underscored the growing web of suspicion and unease. Hercule Poirot, ever meticulous, sensed the subtle shifts in atmosphere, the quiet exchanges behind closed doors, the hesitant nods, the barely concealed resentments. The secondary mystery, the missing letter and cryptic warning, had awakened something deeper beneath the surface, hidden connections that bound the suspects in tangled, fragile knots. Poirot began his day with a deliberate approach, inviting each suspect to recount their histories and relationships within the household. These personal revelations, while cloaked in politeness, offered glimpses into the emotional undercurrents driving behavior. Sir Reginald, when questioned, revealed the strained relationship with his mother. Financial pressures had fueled disagreements, but beneath the tension lay a complex loyalty, marred by pride and unspoken expectations. He admitted to a recent argument with Mr. Grant over business dealings that had soured, a clash masked by civil words, but simmering with unacknowledged hostility. Miss Clara, her composure less assured than usual, spoke of her long service to the Beaumont family. She hinted at old wounds, lost opportunities, and sacrifices made to maintain her place. Her bond with Lady Beatrice was deep, but fraught with moments of jealousy and competition, feelings carefully concealed behind the mask of devotion. Dr. Hawthorne disclosed his long-standing role as confidant, not merely to Lady Beatrice, but to the entire family. He spoke of secrets entrusted in confidence, the burden of knowledge that weighed heavily upon him. His relationship with the household was professional yet tinged with personal investment, revealing layers of complexity. Mr. Felix Grant remained enigmatic, but admitted to financial entanglements with Sir Reginald that extended beyond simple business. These dealings carried risks and resentments, the stakes higher than previously understood. That as Poirot absorbed these revelations, he began to discern patterns, a lattice of grievances, ambitions, and hidden loyalties weaving the suspects into a single, intricate fabric. He gathered the household once more, presenting his observations with careful precision. "My friends," he began, "we are not dealing with isolated actors, but a connected network of relationships, each link binding another in a chain of secrets." He paused, letting his words settle. The disputes over money, the personal tensions, the veiled jealousies, they are all pieces of the same puzzle. The photograph, the stolen necklace, the missing letter, these acts are not random, but orchestrated to exploit these connections. Poirot's gaze swept over the group, noting the flickers of recognition, discomfort, and denial. He then shared a small but significant detail: the discovery of a note tucked inside an old book in the library, bearing initials matching those on the torn letter fragment. The note spoke cryptically of debts owed, favors exchanged, and promises broken. "This," Poirot said, "binds the past to the present. Secrets long buried now claw their way into daylight." Lady Beatrice's eyes shimmered with tears, while Sir Reginald's expression tightened with unease. Miss Clara's fingers twitched, and Dr. Hawthorne's jaw clenched subtly. Mr. Grant's eyes narrowed. Calculating, Poirot sensed the rising tension, the undercurrents of blame and fear swirling like a tempest beneath calm facades. "Tonight," Poirot announced, "we shall observe carefully the interactions between you all. Truth often reveals itself not in words, but in the silences and the glances that pass between. As the day waned and the household prepared for the evening, subtle alliances and rivalries began to surface. A whispered conversation behind a closed door, a fleeting touch on an arm, a lingering gaze, all became pieces in the detective's ever-growing mosaic. Poirot, with his unparalleled insight into human nature, recognized that these hidden connections were not mere background noise, but the very heartbeat of the mystery. The photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace, the missing correspondence, they were all threads pulled taut across this network of secrets. And emotions dot as night draped the estate in shadows. Poirot's mind worked tirelessly, unraveling the knotted threads and preparing for the next step in his intricate dance toward truth. The game was no longer simply about objects or isolated acts, it was about people, their pasts entwined, their motives overlapping, and the silent ties that bound them all. Chapter 10. Poirot's secret clue. The soft rustle of turning pages mingled with the quiet ticking of the antique clock as Hercule Poirot sat alone in the dimly lit library. The evening had drawn a veil of calm over the Beaumont estate, yet within the detective's mind, a storm of thoughts raged, methodical, relentless, precise. Poirot's eyes scanned the notes he had compiled over the past days. The accounts of strained relationships, the inconsistencies in alibis, the cryptic letter fragments, the missing necklace, and the photograph that was not hers. Each piece had been examined, tested, and weighed, but the full picture remained tantalizingly out of reach. He allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Then, as if guided by a sudden illumination, his gaze fixed on a detail previously overlooked, the faint smudge on the corner of the torn letter fragment under the magnifying glass. The smudge revealed a subtle, almost invisible imprint, an impression of a number, partially obscured, but distinct enough for Poirot's keen eye. It was the number 27. A smile touched his lips. This, Poirot murmured, is the key that changes everything. He closed the notebook with care, determined to keep this revelation to himself for the moment. The number was not merely a digit, it was a code, a marker pointing toward a hidden truth, one that had eluded all others. The significance of 27 would unravel the fabric of deception carefully woven within the estate's walls, but timing was everything. Poirot knew that revealing the clue prematurely could alert the culprit, driving them further into concealment or desperate actions. He resolved to use this secret insight strategically, shaping his next moves with precision. As he rose and made his way through the quiet corridors, Poirot's mind replayed recent interactions, the guarded glances, the fleeting hesitations, the subtle shifts in demeanor. Now, with the 27 in mind, these moments gained new meaning. Arriving at Lady Beatrice's suite, Poirot found her seated by the window, her face pale but composed. "Madam," he said softly, "I have uncovered a clue that may shed light on our mystery, but it requires patience and care." She looked at him with weary hope. "Anything to find the truth?" Poirot nodded. "We must observe closely, especially those who are unaware of what we now know later." In the drawing room, Poirot gathered the household under the pretense of a casual evening conversation. He spoke of memories and numbers, of significance hidden in plain sight. "Consider," he mused aloud, "how often a seemingly small detail can be the thread that unravels a tapestry." His eyes met each suspect's in turn, noting the flicker of recognition or discomfort, though he withheld the full meaning of the 27. Poirot used the clue as a lens to re-examine statements and behaviors. He found new questions arising, new angles to pursue. The number resonated with locations in the estate, the 27th page of a ledger, a room numbered 27, a date significant to the family's history. Poirot planned to investigate these leads with utmost discretion. As the night deepened, The detective retired to his study, preparing for the delicate psychological maneuvers that would soon follow. The 27 was a beacon in the labyrinth, and Poirot intended to follow it to its source, the photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace. The missing correspondence all were pieces converging upon this secret. And now, with his secret clue secured, Poirot's little gray cells were poised to illuminate the shadows that cloaked the Beaumont estate's hidden truths. The game was far from over. In fact, it was only beginning to reveal its true complexity. Chapter 11. Tensions Riseth. Days that followed Poirot's discovery of the elusive 27 were marked by an unmistakable shift. Within the Beaumont estate, the air seemed heavier, charged with an undercurrent of unease that rippled through every corridor and chamber. The household, once bound by uneasy civility, began to fracture under the invisible pressures of suspicion and fear. Poirot watched these changes with a keen, unblinking eye. He had deliberately kept the meaning of his secret clue to himself, allowing the tension to build naturally. In his experience, truth was often revealed not in forceful confrontation, but in the way people responded to pressure, their alliances, their betrayals, their attempts to manipulate the situation to their advantage. The first signs appeared in whispered conversations overheard by discreet servants, in furtive glances exchanged in shadowed hallways, and in the subtle shifts of body language during meals. Friendships strained, and old grievances resurfaced with a bitter edge. Sir Reginald, once composed and confident, now paced the library restlessly. His eyes betrayed a flicker of anxiety as he avoided direct confrontation, yet he was quick to deflect blame onto others. His discussions with Mr. Grant grew heated, their business entanglements unraveling into open conflict. Miss Clara, ever guarded, began to withdraw, retreating to the solitude of her quarters. Yet the flicker of resentment in her gaze when others spoke hinted at deeper wounds. She exchanged pointed words with Lady Beatrice, their once harmonious relationship now clouded by mistrust. Dr. Hawthorne, the calm and measured physician, appeared increasingly distracted, his usual composure giving way to subtle signs of strain. Rumors whispered that he had been seen conferring privately with the butler, an association that only fueled speculation. Grant, the outsider with inscrutable motives, maintained his poised exterior, but even he was not immune to the rising tides of suspicion. His sharp observations became tinged with veiled accusations, sowing discord among the household. Poirot, in the midst of this growing tempest, allowed events to unfold while carefully monitoring the dynamics. He knew that in moments of heightened tension, the guilty often made mistakes, revealing knowledge they ought not to have, or betraying themselves in small, involuntary ways. He arranged discreet meetings and casual encounters, observing closely the reactions and interactions. A remark made too quickly, a hesitation too long, a nervous glance, each was a clue in the delicate psychological puzzle. One evening, as the household gathered for dinner, the atmosphere was palpably charged. Conversation was stilted, laughter forced, and eyes constantly darted in search of reassurance or escape. Poirot sat quietly, his presence commanding without intrusion. When Sir Reginald and Mr. Grant engaged in a subtle duel of words over unsettled debts, Poirot noted the quickening pulse beneath Sir Reginald's measured tone. Miss Clara's eyes flicked toward the pair, lips pressed tightly as if containing a sharp retort. Later, when Lady Beatrice excused herself early, Poirot intercepted her in the corridor. "Madam," he said softly, "these tensions weigh heavily. Do you feel safe?" She shook her head. "No, Monsieur Poirot." The shadows grow longer. He offered a reassuring smile. "We are nearing the moment when the truth must come to light. Trust in patience and observation." As night deepened, a secret conversation between Miss Clara and Dr. Hawthorne was overheard by a discreet servant. The hushed voices spoke of fear, of secrets too dangerous to reveal. and of a past mistake that threatened to unravel everything. Poirot's sharp ears caught fragments mentions of a promise, broken and loyalty tested. These whispered words added new layers to the intricate web of relationships and motives. By the next morning, the household was a tinderbox ready to ignite. Alliances formed and shifted like smoke. Accusations lurked behind polite smiles. Poirot, serene amid the storm, prepared for the crucial confrontation that would test the strength of these bonds and reveal who stood on the brink of collapse. The game of truth and deception was entering its decisive phase, and only the keenest mind could navigate the rising tides. With his secret clue as compass, Poirot would guide the unfolding drama, watching carefully as tensions rose, seeking the moment when the guilty would falter. The photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace, the missing correspondence, and now the fractured relationships, all were threads in the intricate tapestry Poirot was slowly unraveling. The evening promised revelations, and Poirot's little gray cells were more vigilant than ever. Chapter 12. The Confrontation. Beaumont estate had settled into an uneasy hush by evening, the flickering candlelight casting long, wavering shadows across the grand drawing room. Outside, the gardens lay silent beneath a veil of mist. But inside, a storm was gathering, one that Hercule Poirot had carefully orchestrated with deliberate precision. He had spent the day weaving a web of subtle provocations and careful observations, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test the resolve of those ensnared in the mystery. Tonight, he would apply psychological pressure, pushing the key figures toward the breaking point where truth might finally emerge. Poirot's eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the assembled suspects. Lady Beatrice, pale but dignified; Sir Reginald, restless and guarded; Miss Clara, tense yet composed; Dr. Hawthorne, quietly anxious; and Mr. Felix Grant, the enigma whose calm exterior belied sharp intelligence. The detective's voice, measured and calm, filled the room. Ms. we find ourselves at a crossroads. The threads of deceit and truth are intertwined, yet one must ultimately prevail. He turned toward Sir Reginald first. Monsieur Beaumont, you have maintained your innocence with vigor, yet inconsistencies linger. Your walk in the garden, your supposed absence from the scene, can you account for every moment? Sir Reginald's jaw tightened, eyes flickering nervously. I have told the truth. I walked alone. No one saw me. Poirot's gaze did not waver. Yet a witness has since come forward, a gardener, who recalls seeing a figure matching your description near the shed after midnight. A flicker of alarm crossed Sir Reginald's face, though he masked it quickly. It is possible he was mistaken. Poirot smiled slightly. Possibility is not certainty, monsieur, but it raises questions. He then addressed Miss Clara. Mademoiselle Ashford, your loyalty is known. Yet I wonder about your recent conversations with Mr. Grant. What secrets were exchanged that might explain your behavior? Miss Clara's lips pressed thin. I have spoken only in defense of Lady Beatrice. Poirot inclined his head. Indeed, but defense can also conceal other motives. Turning to Dr. Hawthorne, Poirot asked quietly, Doctor, your knowledge of the family's health has been valuable, yet there are moments when discretion borders on silence. Have you withheld truths for fear of consequences? Dr. Hawthorne sighed. There are matters of privacy, Monsieur Poirot, but I am committed to the truth. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A noble sentiment, yet truth is often a double-edged sword. Finally, Poirot faced Mr. Grant. Monsieur Grant, your presence here has been marked by observation and quiet calculation. Yet even the most watchful can slip. Grant's smile was thin, his eyes cold. I am merely a guest, monsieur. The affairs of others do not concern me. Poirot's gaze pierced. Yet you benefit from the estate's dealings, and your dark thread found near the scene. How do you explain that? A shadow crossed Grant's face, brief but telling. Accident, perhaps. Poirot allowed the room's tension to build, then lowered his voice to a softer timbre. Now, Ms. Amos, it is in moments of pressure that cracks appear, and a mistake, no matter how small, can reveal the hidden. The detective then revealed a crucial observation. A piece of correspondence was found, torn and stained, bearing a signature unknown to most. Yet, during this evening's search, I discovered a matching fragment in a place only the guilty would know. All eyes turned toward Miss Clara, whose composure faltered for a heartbeat before she recovered with a stiff nod. Poirot pressed gently. "Mademoiselle, care to explain how such a connection came to be?" The room held its breath. Miss Clara's voice was low but resolute. "I found the letter. It was meant to protect Lady Beatrice from certain truths. I tore it to keep her safe." Poirot's smile was subtle but knowing. "A noble act, but one that entangles you in a web of deception." As the confrontation deepened, subtle signs of unraveling appeared. Sir Reginald's foot tapped nervously, Lady Beatrice's hands clenched tightly, and Dr. Hawthorne's gaze flickered toward the door. Poirot then deployed his final gambit of verbal trap designed to provoke a revealing mistake. He spoke of a meeting, purportedly secret, held in the library late at night. The culprit, he suggested, had knowledge of its details. At that moment, a sharp intake of breath came from Dr. Hawthorne. His eyes widened briefly before he masked the reaction. Poirot seized the moment. "Doctor, your knowledge surpasses that of a mere physician, does it not?" The room was silent, the weight of suspicion now heavy and palpable. Poirot's gaze rested on each face. The time for masks grows short. The truth awaits its unveiling. As the evening wore on, the delicate balance teetered on the edge. The pressure mounted, and in the crucible of confrontation, a crucial mistake had been made, one that would lead Poirot closer to the heart of the mystery. The photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace, the missing correspondence all converged in this charged moment, and Poirot's little gray cells, sharp as ever, were ready to unravel the final strands. The drawing room at Beaumont Estate was filled with a tense stillness, the kind that precedes a storm. The heavy curtains were drawn, and the flickering candlelight cast restless shadows that danced on the walls, mirroring the unease settling over the gathered company. Hercule Poirot, calm and composed as ever, had summoned all the principal figures to this moment, the confrontation where truths would be tested and masks peeled away. Lady Beatrice sat with a stoic grace, her pale face framed by the soft glow of the firelight. Sir Reginald stood nearby, his jaw set tight, eyes sharp yet guarded. Miss Clara's usual composure was strained, her fingers nervously twisting the lace of her handkerchief. Dr. Hawthorne, the family physician, watched quietly, his expression unreadable. Mr. Felix Grant leaned slightly forward, attentive, his inscrutable eyes fixed on Poirot. Poirot's gaze swept across them before he spoke, his voice steady and deliberate. "Ms. Amos, we find ourselves at a pivotal juncture. The delicate threads of deception and truth have become tangled, yet one must ultimately prevail." Turning to Sir Reginald, Poirot asked, "Monsieur, you have denied any wrongdoing, yet your alibi for the night of the theft and subsequent events contains gaps. Can you account for every moment with certainty?" Sir Reginald's jaw tightened. "I was in the library, Monsieur Poirot, reviewing financial documents. I admit to stepping outside briefly for air, but I saw no one." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "A gardener has since recalled seeing a figure matching your description near the garden shed after midnight. How do you explain this?" Sir Reginald's confidence flickered. "Mistaken identity, perhaps." Poirot then turned to Miss Clara. "Mademoiselle, your conversations with Monsieur Grant have been noted. Care to explain the nature of these discussions?" Clara's lips pressed thin. "I spoke only in Lady Beatrice's defense." "Defense, yes, but also secrecy," Poirot murmured. Next, Poirot addressed Dr. Hawthorne. "Doctor, Your role as confidant extends beyond medicine. Have you withheld information out of fear or protection? Dr. Hawthorne's calm exterior faltered briefly. Some matters are private, but not from me, Poirot said gently. Finally, Poirot's gaze settled on Mr. Grant. Monsieur, your presence and financial ties to the estate raise questions. The thread found near the scene matches a tear in your cuff. Grant's smile tightened. Accident, monsieur. Poirot's smile was thin. A fortunate accident indeed. With measured precision, Poirot laid out the inconsistencies and contradictions he had observed. The atmosphere thickened as tension mounted. Then, deploying a carefully crafted verbal trap, Poirot mentioned a secret meeting in the library late at night. A detail only the true culprit could know. Dr. Hawthorne's eyes widened imperceptibly. Poirot seized the moment. Doctor, it seems your knowledge exceeds that of a mere physician. The room was silent, heavy with unspoken accusations. Poirot concluded, masks have begun to fall. Soon, the truth will emerge. As the night deepened, the fragile facade cracked, and the first true signs of confession stirred in the household. The game was far from over, but the players had revealed themselves, and Poirot's little gray cells were poised to unravel the final strands. Chapter 13. A desperate attempt to escape. Heath moon hung low over the Beaumont estate, casting a pale, silvery glow through the tall windows of the grand drawing room. The once stately mansion now felt like a fortress besieged, its halls echoing with whispered fears and restless footsteps. The tension that had built over days was now palpable. A storm ready to break. Hercule Poirot sat calmly in his chair, eyes sharp beneath his perfectly groomed mustache, every muscle poised for the unfolding drama. The subtle unraveling of truths had brought the household to a dangerous precipice. One misstep, one rash action, could shatter the fragile balance forever. The night had been quiet until a sudden commotion shattered the silence. A piercing shout came from the corridor, followed by hurried footsteps pounding down the marble floor. The butler burst into the drawing room, pale and breathless. Monsieur Poirot, Miss Clara has fled. She's disappeared from her room. Gasps filled the room. Lady Beatrice clutched her chest, eyes wide with shock. Sir Reginald rose abruptly, knocking his chair askew. Dr. Hawthorne's expression was grim. Mr. Grant's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Poirot rose smoothly, his voice calm but firm. Where was she last seen? The butler replied, leaving her quarters moments ago, claiming she must see Monsieur Poirot urgently. But when I went to fetch her, she was gone. Poirot's gaze swept the room. She intended to speak with me, and then vanished. This is no accident. He moved toward the staircase, signaling the household to follow. The detective's sharp eyes scanned the hallways, noting the faintest signs of discarded glove near the rear exit, footprints smudged in the dew-laden garden path, and a broken branch caught in a thorny hedge. She has attempted to flee, Poirot said quietly. Desperation often leads to reckless decisions. A search party was swiftly organized, but as minutes stretched into an hour, it became clear that Miss Clara was determined and well-prepared. Poirot returned to the drawing room, his mind already piecing together the implications. A desperate flight suggested guilt or fear of discovery, yet it could also indicate a desire to protect, to escape a fate worse than accusation. He addressed the remaining household members. This flight reveals more than mere panic. It signals a turning point. Lady Beatrice's voice trembled. What shall we do? How can we find her before she is lost to us? Poirot's eyes were resolute. We anticipate her moves. We consider where fear and knowledge might drive her. He recalled the secret pathways known only to those familiar with the estate, the old servants, tunnels, the hidden garden gates, the forested edges. With the butler's guidance, Poirot and a small party ventured outside, retracing the garden path. The broken branch led them toward a neglected side gate. Slightly ajar. Beyond, the dense woods stretched, dark and forbidding. Poirot's keen senses detected faint traces, footprints, pressing into the soft earth. A snap of a twig, a rustle in the underbrush. They moved cautiously, following the signs, until a sudden rustling ahead caused them to halt. From the shadows emerged Miss Clara, breathless, eyes wild with fear and resolve. Poirot stepped forward, his tone gentle but authoritative. "Mademoiselle, this is not the way. You must come back." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I cannot. If I stay, everything will be lost." Poirot's gaze softened. "Tell me what drives this flight." Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "The secrets I carry, the lies I have told. I thought running would protect me and Lady Beatrice." The detective nodded knowingly. "The past may haunt, but it need not destroy. Confession and courage can be the path to salvation." Slowly, with Poirot's calm presence guiding her, Miss Clara allowed herself to be led back. Back inside, the household gathered once more. Relief mingled with renewed tension. Poirot addressed them solemnly. This desperate attempt to escape was a crucial mistake. It revealed the burden Miss Clara carries, but also brought us closer to the truth. He then spoke directly to Clara. "Your flight was fueled by fear, but now your voice must be heard." As she began to speak, hesitant but growing in strength, the tangled web of secrets began to unravel. The photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace, the missing correspondence, and now the escape, all threads converging toward revelation. Poirot's little gray cells, ever vigilant, prepared to guide the final steps of this intricate dance of truth and deception. The night was far from over. The Beaumont estate lay cloaked in shadows as the night deepened, the heavy silence interrupted only by the occasional crackle of the fireplace and the soft rustle of restless footsteps. Within these ancient walls, secrets stirred uneasily, as if sensing the tightening noose of revelation closing around them. Hercule Poirot sat quietly in the drawing room, his sharp eyes glimmering beneath his meticulously groomed mustache. The threads of the mystery had begun to unravel, but the web was far from fully exposed. Tonight, the true nature of fear and desperation would reveal itself suddenly. A commotion shattered the stillness. The butler burst into the room, his face pale and voice trembling. "Monsieur Poirot, Miss Clara has fled. She vanished from her quarters moments ago." A gasp rose from Lady Beatrice, who clutched her shawl tightly. Sir Reginald's expression darkened, and Dr. Hawthorne's calm demeanor flickered with alarm. Even Mr. Grant's composed gaze sharpened. Poirot rose smoothly, his calm presence anchoring the rising storm. "Where was she last seen?" "Leaving her room abruptly, saying she must speak with you urgently, monsieur. When I sought her moments later, she was gone," the butler explained. Poirot's eyes narrowed with understanding. "This is no mere flight of panic. It is a calculated attempt to escape the consequences of knowledge." He quickly organized a search party, retracing Clara's steps through the dimly lit corridors and out into the mist-shrouded gardens. Near a side gate, a broken branch caught Poirot's attention, and nearby, a delicate glove lay abandoned. Signs of a hurried departure, Poirot mused. The trail led into the shadowed woods bordering the estate. The faint imprint of footsteps pressed into the damp earth. Poirot moved with practiced stealth, until the rustle of movement in the underbrush revealed Miss Clara. Breathless and eyes wide with fear, "Madam," Poirot said gently, "flight will not shield you from truth." Clara's voice trembled. "I feared ruin, for myself and for Lady Beatrice. The secrets I carry felt like chains." Poirot's expression softened. "Confession is the key to freedom." Slowly, he guided her back toward the estate, each step measured with newfound resolve. Within the drawing room, the household awaited anxiously. Clara's return was met with a mixture of relief and guarded scrutiny. Poirot addressed the group. This desperate flight was a mistake, one that reveals more than words ever could. It is now time for all truths to be spoken. As Clara began to speak, the tangled web of deception and loyalty began to unravel, illuminating the shadows that had long concealed the heart of the mystery. The night deepened around Beaumont Estate, but inside, the light of revelation shone ever brighter. Poirot's little gray cells were at work, guiding the way through fear and despair toward justice and truth. Chapter 14. The final piece falls into Placide. Dawn broke gently over the Beaumont Estate, bathing the sprawling grounds in soft light that belied the storm of revelations simmering within the mansion's walls. Inside, the household moved with quiet anticipation, each member acutely aware that the delicate balance was about to tip and the truth would soon emerge. From the tangled web of secrets, Hercule Poirot sat calmly in the grand drawing room, hands folded and eyes sharp as ever, though a subtle smile played at the corners of his lips. After days of meticulous observation, layered conversations, and psychological maneuvering, he felt the final piece of the puzzle settle into place. The missing number, the whispered alliances, the frantic flight all converged toward an inevitable conclusion. Poirot's mind traced the sequence of events anew. The photograph that was not hers, the symbol of identity and deceit. The torn letter, now partially understood. The stolen necklace, a token of desperation. The missing correspondence and veiled threats, all these facets formed a mosaic that now glimmered with clarity. He had withheld this knowledge until the moment was ripe, watching how tensions escalated, waiting for the precise point when concealed truths would no longer remain buried. As the household gathered, Poirot rose and addressed them with quiet authority. "My friends, we have journeyed far through shadows and silence, but now the tapestry of deceit reveals its final thread." He paced slowly, eyes meeting those of Lady Beatrice, Sir Reginald, Miss Clara, Dr. Hawthorne, and Mr. Grant in turn. The number 27, he began, was not merely a mark, but a signpost, a key that led us to a ledger hidden in the library, detailing transactions and promises long forgotten. He gestured toward the butler, who produced a thick book, its pages yellowed and worn. Poirot opened the ledger to page 27. Here we find records of loans, debts, and favors exchanged, binding the fortunes and fates of this household more tightly than any chain. He then revealed a set of correspondences that linked the suspects more intimately than before. Secret financial dealings between Sir Reginald and Mr. Grant, clandestine meetings between Miss Clara and Lady Beatrice, and whispered confidences between Dr. Hawthorne and members of the staff. Poirot's gaze sharpened. The motive was not simple greed nor petty jealousy, but a desperate attempt to conceal these entanglements. He explained how the photograph had been switched to mask an identity long feared revealed, how the torn letter contained hints of blackmail, how the necklace was a symbol meant to provoke suspicion and divert attention, and how the missing correspondence threatened to expose a web of deceit. As he spoke, subtle reactions unfolded. Sir Reginald's clenched fists loosened slightly. Lady Beatrice's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Miss Clara's composure wavered. Dr. Hawthorne's quiet demeanor faltered, and Mr. Grant's inscrutable mask cracked for a fraction of a second. Poirot paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "And yet," he continued, "the most telling mistake was made in the desperation of flight. The very act of escape betrayed knowledge only the guilty possess." He looked directly at Miss Clara. "Mademoiselle, your confession last night was a turning point, but there remains one question unanswered." The room held its breath. Who orchestrated the substitution of the photograph? Who sought to manipulate and conceal the truth through these cunning acts? Miss Clara's eyes lowered. "It was not alone. I was coerced, threatened with ruin if I did not comply." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "By whom?" A silence hung heavy. Then, With a sudden sharp intake of breath, Dr. Hawthorne stepped forward. "It was I," he confessed, voice steady though laden with remorse. "I feared the consequences for Lady Beatrice. I sought to protect her, to shield her from scandal and pain." Shock rippled through the room. Poirot nodded solemnly, an act born of loyalty, but one that only deepened the mystery and nearly destroyed trust. Dr. Hawthorne continued, "I hid the letter, planted the photograph. The necklace was meant to divert suspicion from matters far more delicate." Poirot allowed the confession to resonate, then turned to Lady Beatrice. "Madam, the burden of secrets is heavy, but the courage to face truth brings liberation." Lady Beatrice, tears now freely flowing, nodded slowly. Poirot looked at the others, his voice firm. Justice and truth must prevail, tempered by understanding. He summoned the household to a final gathering, where the revelations were shared openly, and the path to restoration began. The photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace, the missing correspondence, and the desperate flight all had been pieces of a larger, more human story. As Poirot prepared to depart, he reflected on the delicate nature of trust and the complexity of human motives. The game had been intricate, the stakes high, but in the end, the little gray cells had triumphed once again. And with a graceful bow, Hercule Poirot took his leave from the Beaumont estate, the truth revealed and justice poised to follow. The heavy silence in the drawing room seemed almost unnatural, as if the very walls were holding their breath. The flickering candlelight cast long, dancing shadows that twisted and stretched across the mahogany floorboards, making familiar corners seem strange and secretive. In this charged atmosphere, Hercule Poirot stood quietly, his expression unreadable beneath the waxed curves of his immaculate mustache. His sharp eyes moved deliberately over the assembled group. Lady Beatrice, her face pale but resolute. Sir Reginald, pacing with restless energy. Miss Clara, seated rigidly but eyes flickering with unease. Dr. Hawthorne, the ever-watchful physician, and Mr. Felix Grant, whose poised exterior gave away nothing. The evening brings us closer to truth. Yet the shadows grow longer. Poirot began, his voice low, measured. "This house, with its grandeur and secrets, has witnessed many stories, but few as tangled as this. Each of you is a thread in a web, and we must find the thread that leads us out." A murmur rippled through the room. Lady Beatrice's fingers twitched nervously on the armrest of her chair. Poirot moved to the mantel, resting a hand on the cool marble. "We have uncovered fragments, a photograph not her own, a torn letter, a stolen necklace, missing correspondence, each a piece of a darker puzzle. Yet these are mere symptoms of a deeper sickness, fear, betrayal, desperation." He turned, locking eyes with Sir Reginald. "You have denied involvement, but your financial woes and restless behavior hint at pressures we must not ignore. Tell me, monsieur, who stands with you in these trials?" Sir Reginald's jaw clenched. "I answer for myself. I have no accomplices." Poirot nodded slowly. "Yet I suspect alliances, hidden and fragile." The detective's gaze then shifted to Miss Clara. "Mademoiselle, your flight last night speaks volumes. Fear drives many, but I wonder, what were you fleeing from?" Clara swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. "From the truth, Monsieur Poirot, from what I could no longer hide." Poirot smiled thinly. "And yet, truth is the only remedy." He paced gently, his footsteps soft on the aged carpet. "I have observed your interactions, the whispered exchanges, the glances full of unspoken words. Secrets do not die quietly. They claw their way into daylight." Dr. Hawthorne's voice was steady but tinged with fatigue. "We are all bound by duty, yet also by fear of loss, of exposure. And fear," Poirot replied, "can drive the cleverest to folly." Mr. Grant's eyes gleamed. "There is one among us whose calm is but a mask. The true tempest lies beneath." Poirot's eyes sharpened. Yes, tonight, I intend to press further, to provoke the concealed into revealing itself. He motioned toward the large fireplace. Gather round, for the game is near its climax. The household members reluctantly complied, each taking a place that felt at once familiar and charged with suspicion. Poirot began, weaving his words like a master storyteller. He recounted the timeline, the discoveries, the inconsistencies, highlighting subtle contradictions and inviting the suspects to respond. The tension thickened, voices rising in heated exchanges, accusations carefully veiled but no less sharp. Suddenly, Poirot paused, lifting a slender envelope. "This," he said, "contains a letter found hidden behind the paneling in Lady Beatrice's study. A letter that adds a new dimension to our puzzle." He handed it to Lady Beatrice, who opened it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was unmistakable, a warning laced with menace, referencing debts. Debts that must be paid in blood. A collective gasp filled the room. Poirot's gaze swept the faces before him. The author of this letter fears exposure, yet seeks to silence those who hold the keys to their downfall. He fixed Mr. Grant with a piercing look. "You have connections in shadowed places, Monsieur Grant. Care to explain?" Grant's smile was thin, but unsteady. "I deal in many things, Monsieur Poirot. Not all are pleasant," Poirot nodded, "and some dealings bring consequences more dire than anticipated." Turning to Dr. Hawthorne, Poirot asked quietly, "Doctor, you knew of these debts, did you not? And their dangerous implications?" The doctor's jaw tightened. "Some truths are better left unspoken." "But not tonight," Poirot insisted. The room fell silent, the weight of impending revelations pressing down. As the clock chimed midnight, Poirot's voice softened, yet carried undeniable authority. "The final piece lies not in objects, but in the unraveling of trust. The culprit will reveal themselves in the fractures of loyalty, in the hesitation of breath, in the fall of a carefully constructed mask." A sudden noise at the far door startled the assembly. The butler entered, breathless. "Monsieur Poirot, a letter has just arrived, addressed to you." Poirot accepted the envelope with a steady hand and broke the seal. His eyes scanned the contents. Swiftly, a confession, written in haste but unmistakably genuine, implicating one of the household in acts of concealment and coercion. The detective looked up slowly, eyes gleaming. "The game is over," he declared. The room held its breath, awaiting the final revelation that would bring justice or chaos. And in that suspended moment, Poirot's little gray cells prepared to illuminate the darkness once and for all. Chapter 15. The final gathering. The grand drawing room of Beaumont Estate was alive with an expectant hush, the flickering glow of numerous candles casting a warm, flickering light upon the faces gathered there. The atmosphere was taut, a careful balance between relief and lingering tension. Tonight, Hercule Poirot had summoned all the principal players for a final assembly, a gathering where masks would be lifted, and the intricate tapestry of deceit unraveled with his characteristic elegance. Lady Beatrice sat by the fireplace, composed but visibly exhausted, her delicate hands folded tightly in her lap. Sir Reginald paced near the window, his expression oscillating between brooding and pensiveness. Miss Clara stood close to Lady Beatrice, a shadow of lingering anxiety behind her calm exterior. Dr. Hawthorne leaned against a side table, his typically placid demeanor now touched with gravity, while Mr. Felix Grant observed silently, his inscrutable eyes reflecting the dancing flames. Poirot stood at the center, his posture perfectly straight, his demeanor calm yet commanding. His little gray cells had pieced together a puzzle of human emotion, secrets and lies, and now it was time to reveal the truth. Layer by layer, my friends, Poirot began, his voice measured and clear. We have walked a winding path to reach this moment. What began as a mystery involving a photograph not hers, A torn letter, a stolen necklace, and vanished correspondence has transformed into a tale of loyalty, fear, and desperate choices. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. The estate has been a stage for hidden dramas, debts concealed, alliances forged and broken, and fears so deep they compelled one to deception. Turning to the assembled, Poirot's eyes twinkled with sharpness. I will now reconstruct the sequence of events as they occurred, and show how every act, every deception, was a thread in this complex design. Poirot spoke slowly, his narrative weaving the disparate pieces into a cohesive whole. The photograph, he explained, was switched to mask an identity, a secret from the past that threatened to surface and disrupt the fragile order. The torn letter was a desperate attempt to silence a blackmailer. The stolen necklace was used to misdirect suspicion. A carefully crafted red herring. Poirot then outlined how the missing correspondence, bearing confidential information, had been removed to prevent exposure of delicate financial dealings, and the psychological pressures had driven Miss Clara to flee, fearing the consequences of exposure. As Poirot described the motives and maneuvers, subtle expressions shifted. Sir Reginald's proud composure softened to remorse. Lady Beatrice's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Miss Clara's face was a mixture of relief and shame. Dr. Hawthorne's quiet strength showed through the weight of his confession. Mr. Grant's cold exterior cracked with a trace of reluctant respect. Poirot's gaze fixed on each in turn. You all acted to protect what you held dear, but in doing so, you wove a web that nearly ensnared you all. He then revealed the final and most telling detail, a small, overlooked clue that had shattered the veil of deception. A fingerprint on the torn letter, faint but unmistakable, belonging to one who had tried to conceal their presence. The room gasped softly as Poirot named the culprit, yet rather than anger or accusations, what followed was a profound silence, an acknowledgement of human frailty and the tangled paths that lead us astray. Poirot concluded with a gentle admonition. Justice must be tempered with mercy. Truth, though sometimes painful, is the path to healing. As the gathering slowly dispersed, the heavy burdens that had weighed on the household began to lift, replaced by a tentative hope. Outside, the night air was crisp and clear, stars shining steadily, silent witnesses to the unveiling of long-buried secrets. Poirot lingered a moment by the window, reflecting on the intricacies of human nature, the masks we wear, the lies we tell, and the courage it takes to lay them down. His little gray cells had once again pierced the darkness, and with a satisfied nod, Hercule Poirot prepared to take his leave, his work done, for now. The atmosphere in the drawing room had become taut, as though the very air awaited the moment Hercule Poirot would reveal the long-hidden truth. The candlelight flickered, casting fleeting shadows that seemed to echo the tangled secrets binding the Beaumont estate. Each face was etched with anticipation, anxiety, or guarded resolve, waiting for the detective's final, inevitable disclosure. Poirot stood with his hands lightly clasped behind his back, his gaze steady and precise. The weight of the day's investigation culminated here. The puzzle that began with a mysterious photograph, a torn letter, a stolen necklace, and a missing correspondence was now poised to be solved. All threads led to this singular moment of revelation. Ms. Amos, Poirot began, his voice calm but charged with gravity. We have traveled a winding path, unraveling the fabric of deception woven within these walls. Now it is time to lay bare the truth, with all its complexities and consequences. He turned to face the assembly, allowing silence to deepen before continuing. The photograph that was not hers was a symbol, a carefully placed mask concealing a deeper secret, one that threatened to unravel the fragile peace of this family. The torn letter, stained and incomplete, was an attempt to silence a blackmailer whose shadow loomed over the estate. The stolen necklace was meant to misdirect suspicion and provoke discord, and the missing correspondence contained truths powerful enough to ruin reputations and lives. Poirot paused, his eyes sweeping across the group, noting the subtle shifts, tightening fists, averted gazes, quickened breaths. The web is tangled, but not impenetrable. I have discovered the final piece, a clue overlooked, a mistake made in desperation. He pulled from his pocket a small, folded note. This note, found hidden behind the paneling of Lady Beatrice's study, bears the unmistakable signature of one who sought to manipulate fate itself. He slowly unfolded the paper, revealing a hastily scrawled confession. All eyes turned toward Miss Clara. Poirot's voice was gentle yet resolute. Mademoiselle Ashford, the evidence, the truth you sought to escape, is now before us. Your flight was a desperate act to conceal a secret too painful to face. Clara's composure broke. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she confessed fully, coerced to act under threat, bound by loyalty and fear. Ensnared in a web she could no longer hold. Dr. Hawthorne stepped forward quietly, his voice steady with remorse. I played a part in this deception, attempting to protect those I cared for. But in doing so, I only deepened the wounds. Lady Beatrice's tears now flowed freely, mingling sorrow with relief. Sir Reginald lowered his head, acknowledging his own failings. Mr. Grant's cold demeanor softened, a trace of respect flickering in his eyes. Poirot concluded, the choices made here were born of human frailty, fear, love, desperation. Justice must balance punishment with mercy. As the household absorbed the weight of the revelations, Poirot's little gray cells rested briefly, satisfied that the maze had been navigated. The mystery of the photograph that was not hers had finally been laid bare. A story of shadows and light, deception and courage, lies and redemption, and with a graceful bow, Hercule Poirot prepared to leave, his mission fulfilled, his presence forever etched upon the hearts of those he had helped to heal. Chapter 16. The revealed grand drawing room had transformed into a chamber of solemnity, the weight of anticipation pressing down upon every attendee. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, poised and deliberate, his gaze sweeping the assembly with the precision of a master chess player, about to make the decisive move. Ms. Amos, Poirot began softly, we have reached the moment for truth. The many veils of deception shall now be lifted, and the heart of this mystery laid bare. He paused, allowing the charged silence to deepen, then turned his eyes toward Lady Beatrice. Madam, your courage in facing these trials has been admirable. She inclined her head, her composure fragile but resolute. Poirot's attention then fixed firmly on each suspect, his voice measured yet unyielding. The photograph that was not yours, Madame Beaumont, symbolized a secret that many wished to bury. The torn letter, stained and incomplete, was the thread that threatened to unravel the fabric of this household. The stolen necklace, the missing correspondence, each a calculated move in a game of shadows. He spoke of motives, fear of scandal, protection of reputation, desperation wrought by debts and broken promises. Poirot then revealed the pivotal moment of the investigation, the discovery of a fingerprint on the torn letter, faint but unmistakable. The print belonged to one who had tried to mask their intentions behind a facade of innocence. All eyes turned to Miss Clara. The room held its breath. Mademoiselle Ashford, Poirot said gently but firmly, your role has been complex. Your flight last night betrayed a knowledge you hoped to conceal. Miss Clara's composure faltered, her eyes moist with unshed tears. Poirot continued, yet you were not alone in this. You acted under pressure, threatened by a presence far more dangerous. He then directed his gaze to Dr. Hawthorne. The doctor sought to protect, yes, but in doing so, orchestrated a series of acts-altering evidence, silencing letters, planting false clues to shield Lady Beatrice and himself from ruin. Dr. Hawthorne nodded slowly, acceptance evident in his expression. Poirot detailed how the doctor's fear of exposure had driven the misdirection, the substitution of the photograph, and the concealment of the blackmail letter. Sir Reginald's financial entanglements and Mr. Grant's involvement in strained dealings had further complicated the web. Poirot's voice was steady, yet carried the weight of moral reflection. The choices made, though flawed, were born of desperation and loyalty. He then unveiled the final critical mistake, a slip of knowledge revealed during the psychological confrontations, a detail only the true culprit could have known: the broken branch near the garden gate, the thread caught in the boudoir. These were signs left not by chance, but by guilt. Poirot turned once more to the assembly. Justice demands reckoning, but it also requires understanding. Miss Clara, tears now freely flowing, confessed her involvement fully, revealing the coercion and threats that had bound her actions. Dr. Hawthorne accepted responsibility for the broader scheme of concealment. Expressing remorse, the others listened, a mixture of sorrow and relief washing over them. Poirot concluded, "Tonight, the truth has emerged from shadow. Let this be a moment of reckoning and, hopefully, of redemption." As the household began to process the revelations, Poirot allowed himself a moment's quiet satisfaction. The little gray cells had triumphed once more, piercing the labyrinth of deceit and fear to illuminate the human heart beneath. The photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace, the missing correspondence. The desperate flatal had led to this moment of unveiling. The night deepened, but within the walls of Beaumont Estate, a new clarity had dawned, and Hercule Poirot, with a final composed glance, prepared to close the case. The dawn broke softly over Beaumont Estate, filtering through heavy curtains and casting long, quiet shadows across the polished floors. The household awoke to a fragile stillness, the kind that follows storms not of weather, but of human hearts laid bare and secrets unraveled. Within the grand walls, tension mingled with a tentative hope, as if the very air held its breath, awaiting the reckoning to come. Hercule Poirot moved with his usual calm precision through the morning rooms, his sharp eyes observing the subtle shifts in demeanor, furtive glances, lowered heads, hesitant steps. The consequences of the night's revelations weighed heavily on each soul present, and yet, amidst the heaviness, a sense of justice gently unfurled, promising resolution and perhaps redemption. The detective gathered the household in the drawing room once more, where the flicker of candles illuminated faces etched with exhaustion and reflection. Lady Beatrice sat with quiet dignity, her pale hands folded in her lap, eyes still shimmering from the sorrow and relief of the previous night. Sir Reginald stood near the window, his usual arrogance tempered by the sobering revelations, while Miss Clara, though visibly fragile, carried herself with a newfound resolve. Dr. Hawthorne's calm presence was tinged with remorse, and Mr. Grant's inscrutable gaze bore a rare hint of contemplation. Poirot's voice filled the room, measured and clear, carrying the weight of both mercy and inevitability. Ms. Amos, the path we have traveled together has been fraught with shadows, secrets kept in silence, fears masked by deception. Yet truth, like a steady flame, cannot be extinguished indefinitely. He paused, allowing his words to settle among the listeners. The choices made within these walls, though misguided, were born of love, loyalty, and the desperate wish to protect. These human impulses, though flawed, demand our understanding even as they call for accountability. Turning to Miss Clara, Poirot's tone softened. "Mademoiselle, your courage in confessing and facing the consequences is the first step toward healing. Justice will be served, but also tempered with compassion." Clara's voice, though quiet, held firm. "I only wish to shield those I cared for." Poirot nodded, acknowledging the complex web of emotions entwined in the crime. Such intentions, though leading to wrongdoing, reveal the profound depths of the human heart, Addressing Dr. Hawthorne, Poirot continued, "Your attempts to conceal the truth, though misguided, sprang from a place of devotion. It is now for you to bear the burden of your actions with honesty." Lady Beatrice spoke then, her voice steady despite the tremor of emotion beneath. "We are family, bound by blood and by history. While justice must be pursued, so must forgiveness," Sir Reginald, humbled, admitted. "I have allowed pride and fear to cloud my judgment. It is a lesson learned too late, but learned nonetheless." Mr. Grant, ever the observer, reflected quietly, "Truth revealed can mend fractures, if only we choose to accept it." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed, the course ahead is one of rebuilding trust and seeking peace." He outlined the practical steps, liaising with authorities, ensuring fair treatment, and safeguarding the estate's future with renewed transparency. As the morning wore on, conversations softened and tentative reconciliations began. The heavy burden of suspicion gave way, if only slightly, to understanding later. Poirot found a quiet moment with Lady Beatrice in the garden. The early sunlight filtered through the budding branches, a gentle promise of renewal. "Madam," Poirot said softly, "we are all prisoners of our fears and desires, yet within each of us lies the capacity for courage and change." She smiled faintly, hope glimmering in her eyes. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, for guiding us through darkness." With a graceful bow and a final glance at the estate that had challenged and humbled him, Poirot prepared to depart. The mystery of the photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace, the missing correspondence, the desperate flight, and the final unveiling all had revealed not just a crime, but the fragile complexity of human nature. As Poirot stepped into the morning light, his little gray cells already stirred by the promise of new enigmas. The household behind him breathed in the fragile peace of justice served, and the uncertain hope of redemption. The game had ended, but the lessons endured, and Hercule Poirot, ever watchful, vanished quietly into the dawning day. Chapter 17, Outcome and Justice's Revelation, had settled like a weight across the Beaumont estate, its ripples touching every heart and mind within the venerable walls. The household, once cloaked in suspicion and shadow, now stood exposed, each individual confronting the consequences of concealed truths and fragile loyalties. The air was heavy with a mixture of relief, sorrow, and a tentative hope for healing. Hercule Poirot remained a calm pillar amid the shifting tides, his sharp gaze observing the complex interplay of emotions that followed the confession. Miss Clara's tear-streaked face bore the marks of guilt and fear, while Dr. Hawthorne's quiet remorse spoke of the burden of secret sins. Lady Beatrice's eyes, still shimmering with unshed tears, reflected both pain and forgiveness, while Sir Reginald and Mr. Grant wrestled with the shadows of their own choices. The detective's voice, measured and deliberate, broke the fragile silence. "Justice is a delicate balance between truth and mercy, punishment and understanding. The path forward must honor both." He turned first to Miss Clara. "Your flight and concealment were acts born of fear, yet the courage to confess is the first step toward redemption. You shall face the consequences of your actions, but also the chance to rebuild." Miss Clara nodded, her voice trembling but resolute. "I only wished to protect those I cared for." Poirot's gaze softened. Such intentions, though misguided, reveal the complexity of the human heart. Dr. Hawthorne stepped forward, voice steady. "I accept responsibility for my part. My actions were driven by loyalty and desperation, but I recognize now the harm caused." Lady Beatrice approached, her voice gentle but firm. "We are bound by family and trust. While justice must be served, so must compassion." Poirot acknowledged her words. "The law will determine the formal judgments. Meanwhile, the bonds of this household, though tested, may yet endure." Sir Reginald, his demeanor subdued, spoke with newfound humility. "I have been blinded by pride and fear. I shall seek to make amends. Mr. Grant, ever the observer, nodded quietly. The truth unveiled allows for clearer paths. I too will reflect on my role. As the household absorbed the implications, Poirot outlined the practical steps liaising with the authorities, preserving evidence, and ensuring that justice would be pursued fairly and without prejudice. He reminded them that while the darkness of deception had cast long shadows, the light of truth now shone brightly. Later, in a quiet moment with Lady Beatrice, Poirot reflected on the nature of human frailty. "Madam, we are all prisoners of our fears and desires. The choices we make reveal not only who we are, but who we might become." She smiled faintly. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, for your wisdom and compassion." As the dawn broke anew over Beaumont, the estate stirred with cautious optimism. The ordeal had tested its foundations, but also forged new understandings. Justice would be served, but so too would the chance for healing and renewal. And Hercule Poirot, his task nearing completion, prepared to depart with the quiet dignity that had become his hallmark. The photograph that was not hers, the torn letter, the stolen necklace, the missing correspondence, the desperate flight, and the final unveiling, all had converged into a story of human complexity and resilience. With a final nod to the household, Poirot stepped into the morning light, his little gray cells already turning toward new mysteries yet to be solved. Chapter 18. The closing remarked morning sun rose over the Beaumont estate with a gentle clarity, casting soft light upon a household forever changed. The heavy shadows that had once loomed over its walls were now lifted, replaced by a fragile calm. A calm born of truth unveiled and justice tempered with mercy.